Ever since 1928, almost 100 years ago, TV shows have graced our screens through many iterations, through evolving social acceptabilities, genres, modes, and moving from cable networks to streaming. TV has been a long running figure of the entertainment industry. I like TV. Heck, I watched over 40 of the TV shows released in 2024 last year, which is a lot. And it was a variety of genres, styles, episode lengths, season lengths, etc. But it all got me thinking about the current state of TV production, mostly affected by the pandemic creating an overdemand for streaming services and streaming content, and how, quite frankly, it doesn't work. Or at least it doesn't work in quite the way people are expecting. And just a heads up, there may be major spoilers for several shows. The modern formula for TV is an 8 episode season of 45 to 50-minute episodes, and it happens with almost every single show made today. The main reason for this particular formula is that the cheapest and easiest one to produce is this formula, but it possesses a ton of its own problems that it is so common in modern television. One is the pacing. 8 episodes seems like a lot, but when you take into account the time of the episodes as well as the size of the story you are trying to tell, when you have only 8 episodes to tell an entire story, you run into a lot of pacing issues. Story and plot lines go nowhere. Characters do not get the time they need to develop, and the finale can feel rushed. When you have only a limited amount of time to tell your story, you feel you have to rush at a breakneck pace, barely stopping to do important story and character moments that you need to make a story feel interesting. All for a finale that is supposed to be impactful, but really isn't. Pacing in TV plays a massive role in how a finale is portrayed, as well as how an audience perceives your story. The early MCU shows like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Miss Marvel, and Secret Invasion suffered because of this. 6 episodes, each 45 minutes long, was not enough time to tell these stories. They had a lot of good moments and a good story, most of them, but suffered with their finales being rushed, storylines and characters, particularly villains, being left out or underdeveloped, and it had a supreme impact on how the MCU was perceived. Now, imagine these shows were all 10 episode miniseries with almost hour-long episodes. They would have been much better paced, the finale would have felt less rushed and much more built up, characters would be well developed, these stories would have been much better perceived. You could also say that a lot of them could have actually been better as movies rather than as series. Now, of course, shows like Loki and Moon Knight did very well with this style, which is part of the problem. This doesn't matter. There are so many examples of shows that break this formula. Broadchurch season 1 and 2 worked incredibly well and were incredibly well paced. Dune Prophecy managed to make 6 1-hour episodes feel like a drag. Heck, most sitcoms don't even have pacing since they really have no cohesive story. Yeah, it's annoying. There's a lot of inaccuracy in this because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But the problem is that the modern way of producing TV with streaming services makes this style of TV so common, and therefore so many companies think it is easy to make these shows and give them no time or money to do it. The other factor in the problems with modern TV is cancellations and season productions. A series with 5 seasons of 8 episodes sounds like a lot, but once again, it depends on how these 8 episodes and indeed seasons are paced. If one season feels like a long and drawn out, whilst the other feels fast paced and action packed, that isn't a problem necessarily. It may be a result of the story. But the thing about the seasons of a show is they all serve a different purpose, and this is where the problem, or at least for me, arises. There's an endless cycle of TV shows being cancelled after only one season, for various reasons. And in my opinion, a show needs at least 2 seasons before cancellation. And here's why. The first season of any TV show has a lot of establishment that it needs to do, establishing the characters, the conflicts, the law of the world in some cases, motivations, locations, and many more. And much of the season's runtime is taken up in establishing all that and building the tension towards the conflict. And yeah, sometimes it is not as interesting as the action packed middle portions of some larger shows, but you need this establishment in order for audiences to understand what is going on. If you don't have that, audiences would be lost and you would still suffer from low ratings. Look at Castlevania Nocturne. Its first season was about setting up this new situation, these new characters, and getting us to like them, as well as the new conflict. Season 2 was able to move past that and get to the action, which is why the second season was an improvement on the first. And this could be the case for so many other shows like Lockwood and Co., Pantheon, Netflix's Defenders, and many, many more. They need more seasons to showcase what they were truly about. Your first season is never the best, but it leads to so much better. On the subject of cancellations, streaming services operate under viewership. The more views something gets, the more likely they are to continue with it, within reason to what the creators want, obviously. But this is another problem in itself. By basing the quality of shows based on how many people view it is a very, very bad way of doing it. It's why so many shows get cancelled for not meeting very, very high thresholds set by streaming services. The other issue with viewership is it's based on marketing, primarily. The smaller productions like Pantheon, like Dead Boy Detectives, and would not have been marketed nearly as much as shows like Bridgerton or Stranger Things. Granted, this is based on the popularity of these shows and IPs, but these shows do have a following, and relying on viewership to dictate the fate of these shows leaves many in the dust. This is especially egregious with shows that leave a finale open to a new season. A closed finale or an open ended one means it's less egregious given there were no current plans for continuation, but a finale that directly sets up or teases a continuation story feels especially evil to cancel, as there is more to tell, especially in shows that are building towards something great. So we have discussed the problems with modern TV productions, but how can we fix it? How can we improve on the way that TV is produced today? Well, first of all, we have to stop the modern production method, or at least change it. The 8 episode season is not going to keep being the easiest way to produce TV. It's also going to start becoming less and less popular as more and more shows fail and people become bored of it. So, what needs to change? First of all, make the regular season length between 10 to 15 episodes. That provides you a much bigger order with which to tell your story. And two, increase the episode time. There is nothing wrong with a 50-minute to hour-long episode, provided you know what you are doing, as it gives you the most time to tell your story in a way that doesn't feel rushed, and the finale feels like a natural end to the show. Heck, even have a finale that's longer than the other episodes to really help pace out the show in a good way, like the season finales for Stranger Things and Hilda, which were both pretty much movie length. The way TV is produced needs to be changed in order for more and more shows to get the same chance of becoming successful. And then the second thing is to give shows a fair chance. There are a lot of TV shows out there, and whilst they are all given a chance, there is a difference between giving a show one season to gain a following and allowing it to showcase some of its story. If more shows like Lockwood and Co. were given a chance and were given another season to really showcase its story, they could have gained the following really needed for the show to be able to continue. As I have said, your first season is a season spent developing your story and your world. Of course, it's not going to appeal to as many people at first. Give each show a 2 season order initially to gauge whether or not the story is able to gauge an audience, but this also allows stories to do a better job when they are cancelled at perhaps bringing the story to a much more satisfying conclusion than most. A good example is The Owl House, which knew it was getting cancelled, so was able to finalize its story in the best possible way. And the third thing is to lower viewership requirements. Viewership requirements are the biggest killer for streaming TV. It's not the fault of a small scale show that I cannot reach the audience required to get a second season if it's a much smaller show, but it happens so often with so many shows that fail to reach the highest standards, affected by poor or lack of marketing. Poor release schedules, aka releasing a season all at once so it doesn't drum up as much viewership over time, as well as poor reception. Lowering the viewership numbers helps more and more of these smaller productions be able to reach the required threshold for continued seasons, allowing them to create stories that can eventually reach the highest standards of these services. Also, maybe listen to the fans. Even if the show is not as successful as Stranger Things or Bridgerton, but there is a strong support for the show to continue, then let it continue. Entertainment is supposed to be made for the people, a fact many in the industry and many on social media seem to have forgotten. All of these problems, if they were fixed, would really help make the world of streaming television seem so much more sort of well organized. As well as that, we wouldn't be bombarded with hundreds of TV shows a year, most of which don't go anywhere because more time would be focused on the production of seasons of other shows. So let's just fix it.